Hey guys, Jordan here, your new electronic music producer friend and educator for how to produce music without tearing your hair out. This is the Foundations course, and I thought that it'd be fitting that I have this hippy-dippy background behind me because I want you to change everything you think you know about music. And I want you to realize something that you may not have thought about before. And I need the power of this astrology chart behind me to tell you. No, it has nothing to do with astrology. But frequency is literally everything.
There's only one good thing about coming to these races, and that is the vibrations from the cars. Oh, I love them cars with fire.
Ricky Bobby. Everything is a vibration in the entire universe. I don't know if you know that many people go about their lives not realizing this or thinking about it, but literally everything that you see and everything around you is nothing more than vibration. Now, what do I mean about this? I mean that from a physics perspective.
What is physics? Physics is nothing but the laws of harmony that you can write on vibrating strings. What is chemistry? Chemistry is nothing but the melodies you can play on interacting vibrating strings. What is the universe? The universe is a symphony of vibrating strings. It is cosmic music resonating through 11-dimensional hyperspace.
The entire world is just vibrations, just oscillating, moving energy. Sound is vibration, light is vibration, even taste and touch is vibration. When you touch something that's hot, it's a higher frequency, that's why it burns. Something that is cold is lower frequency. Something that is high-pitched is higher frequency. Something that is very bright purple is a high frequency color, whereas red is a very low frequency color. Everything in your world is frequency, and you need to understand that before we even start talking about music. So even though I'm not going to be going over all the mathematics of music because I don't want this to be yawn-inducing, and I want you guys to enjoy this course because I know that if you're entertained, you're going to get a heck of a lot more out of this. And I know some of the best teachers I ever had used humor to help me remember things. So the first thing I want you guys to remember as you're coming into this Foundations course is when you think about music, I want you to think, yeah, 3 M's, M. That's all you need to remember, and that's it. So thanks for watching. You're now a pro. But seriously, the 3 M's are melody, movement, and mixing. That's all you really have to remember. Those are going to be the 3 first chapters of the Foundation course. Each one of them are going to have an exam at the end, testing what you've learned. And we're really going to be applying this directly. You're going to get to see me go through each step on the screen right in front of you. And we're going to have a blast doing it, guys, so let's get started. The digital audio workstation is what you use as your complete software tool. It's like the house that the music is going to be created within. It contains all of the tools that you need, start to finish, to record and export your audio into a full-length song, and also determines what quality level that song is going to be, how it's going to be mixed, things like that. So because it's one of the most important decisions an aspiring music producer will ever make, probably shouldn't be your first decision. That being said, you're going to need to familiarize yourself with the most popular and professional used DAWs that are out on the market so that you can kind of start getting an idea of how each one of them is unique and which one may suit your unique workflow. In the end, your decision is going to be based off what is best for you, not quote-unquote what is the best software out there. There really is no answer to that. An educated and professional producer can use just about any digital audio workstation that's out there to create a evocative and inspiring track, and it's really not too important which one you choose other than what suits your ideal workflow. To help you get started, I've compiled a list of free resources to show you that you can start completely for free and not have to invest a single penny outside of your computer, of course, because you will need a computer for this, and it can't be a Celeron D processor from 2009. You're probably going to need a decent computer setup. For now, just know that you're going to need a computer that has at least 4 gigabytes of memory and a dual core processor, and that's about the only limitations that I'm going to give you right now. You're going to run into a lot of technical frustrations as you go forward, and I'll do my best to help you with those if you reach out to me via my contact form on the website. But we're going to cover pretty much everything that I think most people have issues with when they're first getting all of this software set up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to download a demo of whichever DAW you choose. I'm going to list the 4 most popular ones right now. It's going to be Ableton, Cubase, Pro Tools, and Fruity Loops Studio. Those are the pretty much unanimously agreed to be the most prevalent and popular digital audio workstations on the market right now. All of them have their own unique abilities and strengths and weaknesses, and all of them can be used to create masterpieces, truly. And there isn't one that's more suited for a genre than another either. It's all about the workflow. So some key differences I've noticed over the years are Ableton is more focused on building loops and patterns and then using those loops to create rhythmic based music. So it's kind of, it is aimed towards electronic dance and things like that because everything is being repeated in chunks basically, but so it's a little bit less linear. Fruity Loops Studio also has that, where you're kind of building these rhythms that just keep repeating and repeating, and you build on top of the repetition to create a more and more complex track over time. Whereas programs like Pro Tools and Cubase are a little bit more linear. They're focused more on the whole song as an entirety. And you're going to be doing the same sort of looping and copying and pasting chunks of like drum loops and melodies that are being repeated throughout the track. You're going to have those same elements pop up, but everything is being done on a linear time frame from beginning to end. We're not focusing on like 5-second clips as much as the other programs. Pro Tools is probably regarded as the most popular in the industry. There are a few reasons why I personally don't use Pro Tools, and it's mainly because of the proprietary formats. When you go with Pro Tools, it's kind of like going with Apple. You're going to have formats that it uses that other formats you're going to have formats that it uses that other programs and other operating systems do not use, and you're not going to be able to collaborate as easily with other artists because if they're using Pro Tools, you have to be using Pro Tools for the most part. You can still collaborate with other artists by basically exporting the entire song as a whole and then sending it to them, and then they can edit it in a different digital audio workstation. But if you want to keep it really easy and have them be able to see all of the melodies and things like that, you generally want to have a program that is more open and less restrictive in the formats that it uses. Now, Cubase or Steinberg, the creators of Cubase, actually invented the most popular format right now, which is called VST or VSTI. And this format can be used in Fruity Loops, it can be used in Cubase, it can be used in Ableton, and many other formats. And that's why I personally choose to use VSTs and not use all these other types of file formats. So now that you have an idea what the most popular digital audio workstations are, go ahead and pick one. Don't be afraid. Just pick it at random if you really have trouble making this decision, because right now it's not going to matter. If you want to follow along exactly with me in the exact same program, then go ahead and download the Ableton Demo, and you can follow along with me in the same exact program that I'm using. But I just want to stress that Ableton's not necessarily the best. None of them are necessarily the best, and in the end, Ableton may or may not be the right one for you. But the techniques that you're going to learn in this course will apply to all of these workstations. So it's really irrelevant which one you choose, because right now you're just at the learning stage. When I first started producing electronic music, I started with Fruity Loops, I moved on to Cubase, and then I finally ended up in Ableton. I've used 3 different ones throughout my experience as a producer, and then of course I downloaded and educated myself on Pro Tools simply because it's one of the most popular ones, but I personally choose not to use it. So my ideal workflow ended up being somewhere between Fruity Loops and Cubase, and that's kind of what I think Ableton provides. So if you want something more linear, go ahead and download Cubase. It's what people like Hans Zimmer use to produce their soundtracks. Or you can download Ableton, which is what people like Skrillex, and there's many other electronic artists out there that use it, with deadmau5, another example. Or you can download Fruity Loops or Pro Tools. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll get started. So let's talk about the 4 critical components of electronic music production. You've got your DAW, which we just covered. Within the DAW, you have the 3 other components: synthesizers, samples and loops, and effects. First, we're going to cover samples. Samples are basically just audio recordings of any sort. Because they've already been recorded, there's no way to change the way the original sound was created, unless of course you were the one that created it. Because of this, samples are much more simple than synthesizers, but also much more limiting. A sample can refer to anything ranging from a short clip from an existing song, just clip a few seconds of an existing song and use it. You hear it often in genres like hip-hop. Or it can be an individual sound recorded start to finish, such as a kick drum or a cymbal. Loops are also considered samples. Just remember that when you hear the word sample when we're talking about music, we're usually referring to audio clips that are under 1 second long, that are typically drums or effects such as whooshing sounds, explosions, and etc., but can also refer to just about any recording at all. Synthesizers, on the other hand, are tools we use to create new audio recordings or create our own samples. Because of this, synthesizers are far more complex than samples, and also far more powerful in the creation of new sound. You're actually creating new sounds with synthesizers, not editing existing recordings. There are many types of synthesizers out there, thousands at this point, and they all have different formats. Many synthesizers that may have been popular 5-6 years ago are not going to be as prevalent or relevant in today's industry. There are many different brands that are pushing new synthesizers every day, but this tutorial series is not aimed to convince you of the superiority of one plugin or synthesizer over another, but to just help you understand which companies are out there that are the largest in the industry at the time of this recording. So some of the most notable synthesizer manufacturers out there are going to be Native Instruments, FabFilter, Waves, and many more. So I couldn't possibly cover all of the different brands of synthesizers in this one video. But each one of them have their own flavor. I'll help you to understand the differences between them as we progress. But for now, we're just going to focus on the free ones. And how could I forget effects? Seriously, how did I forget effects? I didn't record the footage. That's why I'm in a different area right now. Effects are generally referring to one of 2 things in music production. We're either talking about SFX, sound effects, like your favorite meme, a clip from your favorite meme, the little air horn, explosions, sounds of whooshing air, things like that. Those are SFX. And then we have effects, EFFECTS, which are things like reverb, delay, flanging, and phasing. Though there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different effects that can completely distort and destroy a sound or make it sound like the most harmonious combination of angelic singing that there is. So effects are what you use after you've come up with the sounds that you like to change the way that those sounds sound. I've compiled a list of free synthesizers and plugins that you can use right here that's up on the screen, or you can find it in the links that are on the YouTube page or the education page on my website. And these are all going to be free resources that I recommend as you're getting started. You don't have to invest in a $1,000 music production bundle with native instruments or anything like that to get started, nor would I recommend it, because you may not even end up liking that software. You may end up regretting that purchase. It's better to learn how to use the free software first, because the same techniques that you use to edit sounds in the free software, you'll use to edit the sounds in professional software. And like I said earlier, even with the free software, you can make professional sounding music. It's all just dependent on you. Alright, so let's get started and take a look at a few examples of the core components of music production. So what we're looking at right now, of course, is the digital audio workstation. This is Ableton Live as an example. And we have a few things loaded up already in here. We have a sample, we have a synthesizer, we have a sound effect, and we have a drum loop. And we also have some effects. We have a reverb effect, a delay effect, some flanging effects, and some phasing effects, just to give you an example of what different effects sound like, what a synthesizer is, what samples look like. This is a loop, for example, that's loaded up here. And I'm going to go ahead and go through this with you. You can download the project file if you'd like to follow along in Ableton, or you can just download these individual tracks and you can open them up in any DAW. So let's take a look at the sample. So this sample was downloaded from Looperman. Wait, let me see. All right. So this particular sample here, called Maxo, was downloaded from soundpacks.com, which is just a place I found. There's a million websites like these. This is one of them that allows you to download free sample packs and things like that, royalty free. One thing you always have to be careful of when you're downloading these things, if you're going to choose a source that I haven't provided you, make sure to check the licensing and make sure that you can indeed use this in your own non-commercial or commercial work. You don't want to accidentally release a song and come to find the samples you were using were actually copyrighted. So if I'm giving you the source, then you're free to use these as deemed by the license on the respective website. So just read the license page. But if I'm providing you with the samples, you can pretty much guarantee they are royalty free, and you don't have to worry about attributing or doing anything fancy. This is the page for it, and basically I just downloaded this whole pack here. It comes with 20 samples, and I imported one of them that was called Maxo. The tempo, which don't get too worried about all these terms, but the tempo is 140 beats per minute. And the project, as you can see here, is 140 beats per minute. That's what this number signifies. That means every minute there's 140 beats. And you don't have to worry about what all that means. All you have to worry about is that it's timed up properly. For all of our demos here, since we're just starting, it's all going to be timed up for you. You don't have to worry about that. As we progress, I'll teach you how to make things time up even when they don't originally. So let's take a listen to what this sample sounds like with no effects or anything else. So it's a pretty simple little pad combined with like a lead, and there's already some effects built into this sample. You may notice there's actually some reverb and some delay, maybe even some other effects already on here before it was recorded. Now, because of that, we can't undo it. We can't take the reverb out necessarily. I mean, with some, you can kind of nitty-gritty go in depth, and you can kind of surgically remove things, but it's a hassle. It's unnecessary. You're basically, when you're working with samples, for the most part, you're stuck with what you have, and you can add things to it, but you cannot subtract things. So I can't take out that reverb. I cannot take out the delay. I just have to work around it. So we have that sample there, and I want to show you what different effects sound like when they're applied to that sample. So I have one over here called reverb, delay, flanging, and phasing. Let's listen to reverb. So you can hear how that really opens it up. So you can hear how that really opens it up and makes it sound a lot more spacey. It fills out the room. Reverb is basically ambient sound from the natural effect of sound bouncing off walls. And what reverb does is it tries to simulate that effect. So it gives it an open, airy feeling, or even a constricted kind of tight feeling, depending on the size of the room that we're in. So naturally, if we're in a giant chamber, the sound is going to go on for a long time. It's going to echo. But if we're in a tiny little hallway or a tiny little room, the sound is going to be a little bit more constrictive. It's not going to be so ambient and large and consuming. So that's reverb, and that's kind of the effect that it has. And here's an example of delay. And as you can tell, the delay goes on far after I've actually stopped playing the sound. What delay does is it takes a sound and it kind of repeats it at a lower volume and perhaps with less bass or less treble added to give kind of a repeating effect. And so that's where that da 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 effect comes from. You can alter that rhythm any way you want. It can be a dead-on rhythm where it's like da 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 da, or it can be juxtaposed like I did it, which basically just means shifted off beat a little bit. And we have flanging. So let's hear an example of flanging. This is another common effect that's used in music production. Now, if you've ever worked with electric guitars, you may find that a little bit familiar. It may sound a little bit like a wah pedal to you. Flanging is an effect that's been around for a very long time, just like delay and reverb, and it's commonly used to give a more moving feel to the sound so that the sound isn't so dead on and flat and lifeless. So flanging does help to kind of keep things flowing and moving around. Phasing is very similar. A phaser does almost the same thing that a flanger does, with a little bit different of an effect. This particular one is going to be a bit more of an extreme example that makes it sound a little bit metallic, because I wanted to show how flanging can be different from phasing. So here's an example of a phasing plugin. So you hear that metallic ringing noise? That's actually created by the phaser. So now let's take a look at what these actually look like. So each one of these sends, as they're called, I'm not going to go into that too much right now, just focus on the fact that it's reverb. Each one of these little panels over here on the screen contain a different effect. This effect is reverb, and what we're looking at here are 3 different plugins. Now, 2 of these come with Ableton. the EQ 8 over here and the saturator. This particular one is just basically a fancy reverb plugin that I have in my library, but this could easily be substituted out for the reverb that comes built in with Ableton, the reverb that comes built in with Cubase, Pro Tools, Fruity Loops, etc. All music production programs pretty much come with reverb, delay, flanging, and phasing. It's very common. They also come with EQing and usually saturating, and they usually have limiters as well. That's what this is. Those are some examples of effects, and in the later lessons we're going to be going more in detail as to how to fine-tune these effects, but for now just know that you can have them in varying amounts. So right now I'm just going to turn the reverb all the way up by adjusting this knob here, A, which corresponds to reverb A over here, B corresponds to the B delay, C to flanging, and D to phasing, and any of these knobs here can be adjusted on any of these samples, synthesizers, sound effects, or drum loops to give it more of whatever that effect is. So I'm going to turn the reverb all the way up, and for now I'm just going to ignore that. Now let's take a look at a synthesizer, an example of a synthesizer. Right now, if you're following this course in Christmas of 2018 or early 2019, this was a free synthesizer provided by Native Instruments as like a holiday bundle. It may still be available for free. I'm going to go ahead and put the link up for you. If you can't get this for free, that's fine. There's a million plugins just like it. I wouldn't pay any money right now, okay? This is just a random one that I downloaded because it was free, because I wanted to show you that you don't need to spend money to produce music when you're just learning. So this is one of many free plugins. This one is focusing on bass. So all I did was I loaded up a bass sound, and I just had it be a preset. I chose from this list here. I didn't even turn any knobs or do anything. I just chose a sound from a list that sounded good with the sample that I had before, and I just did a little melody on it. So this is kind of what a synthesizer looks like. It's a basic one. Synthesizers have many different knobs on them that adjust the way that the sound is heard. And we're going to go into all of these over time, but for now, just know that this is kind of what a synthesizer looks like. And this is kind of what a synthesizer sounds like, at least this particular bass synthesizer. Now as it's playing, you can see some movement. Not all synthesizers have visual feedback like this, but I do recommend the ones that do because it helps you to understand what's happening with the sound. This is a bass sound, and here's the little melody that it's playing. So let's watch the melody as it's being played so you can kind of follow the timing. Each time one of these little squares stops, each time one of the squares has some empty space, that's when a new note begins. So every time a square is on the screen, the sound will be played at that pitch. And so we have like a little piano over here, and everybody should be familiar with what a piano sounds like and looks like. If not, you may need to go back to even some earlier foundations, but just familiarize yourself with what a piano looks like. And because you're going to be seeing that a lot in any digital audio workstation, we have what's called the piano roll, and that's how we imagine notes in this world. We don't have to do the old-fashioned notation with the little treble clef and the bass clef and the lines and all the little dots. You don't have to worry about that in music production. It's a little bit more simple, visualized with this piano. And you can make these bigger or smaller so that it's easier for you to see what you're doing, and you can actually see the name of the note that's being played. So right here it says A, F, 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 A, C, 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 C. So this is what it sounds like. And that basically times up with the existing sample that we had, and it kind of matches with it. I'll show you in the end though, because I want it to be a surprise. Now we have a sound effect. And this is another sound effect that I downloaded off zapsplat.com, another great resource. Zapsplat really isn't geared for drums and things like that. It's more for actual sound effects. So this is a really great recording of an Australian forest where you can hear some chirping and some crickets in the background, and it matches really well with the song. And you can see the waveform right here as it's being played, and it's just basically some crickets, so nothing fancy there. That's a sound effect. That's what I would consider a SFX or sound effect. And then the final thing here is a drum loop. This particular drum loop was downloaded from looperman.com, which is another great resource for people who are just starting off and they want to learn. All the loops on there are free, and that means that many of them can be low quality or submitted by other students who aren't quite at that professional level yet. So if you're looking for really professional loops, this might not be the best website, but if you do some digging and you go through all the pages of loops, you're going to find some good ones in there. And the one that I found is, let me see if I can find the name of it for you. Well, it'll be up on the screen. So you can download that loop, and here's what the drums sound like. Well, let me turn this off real quick. Don't want you to hear it with the reverb. So here's what the loop sounds like when you first just download it. So this drum loop already has some effects on it as well. If you may notice already that it has some reverb on there. And what I am going to do is I'm going to accentuate that a little bit so that it matches with this song. So it's a very simple little effect that I'm going to do. Basically, I'm going to have, every time you hear that little snap, that little clap, it's going to send that sound to that reverb effect so that you can hear more reverb, but only on the snaps. And that's what's going on down here. And it looks a little complex, and it is kind of not the best way of doing it, but I was just feeling lazy, so I did it this way instead of you know, a more professional way. But one cool thing about music production is there's a million ways to do the same thing, and there really is no right or wrong way. So this is one way to accomplish that effect. And here's what it sounds like when you add reverb, but only on the snaps. And you can actually see the knob moving on time every time the song gets to that particular point of the loop. And it just adds some more reverb to it. Pretty simple, right? So don't worry about how all that is done right now. Just know that's reverb, and that's what it does to a sound. And this is a drum loop, a sound effect, a synthesizer, and a sample. And let's hear what it all sounds like together. And you can fine-tune all of these effects in real time as you're listening to the song. And that's what's really cool about music, is sometimes it's kind of like just jamming out. Sometimes you're just playing and having fun. And that's sometimes when the best ideas come to you. So you just loop it and you listen to it over and over again, and you just kind of adjust these knobs, and you hear, oh, well, here's what it sounds like with delay on the main lead here instead of reverb. And you can adjust your volume levels with these knobs here, with these little sliders. You can adjust how much of an effect is being received by an instrument. And all of this is visual and right on the screen, and that's what the digital audio workstation does for you. Every single DAW has these common reoccurring things. You've got the volume sliders, you've got an on-off button that makes the whatever is here be able to be heard or not. You've got the S, which is a solo. You know what, I'll go more in depth on all of the components of a DAW in the next lesson, but for now this is just the foundations. So the foundations of music are all represented right here. For electronic music production, you've got your digital audio workstation, you've got samples and loops, which are sometimes the same thing in this example. You've got synthesizers, which can do anything from bass to flowing pads and leads and plucked instruments. Synthesizers can do just about anything. You've got sound effects, which are just like recordings of even crickets in this example. And you've got drum loops and samples of drums. And then you've got the effects that change the way those sounds sound. And that's it. Those are the foundations of music. So hopefully that's all pretty easy to understand.